Hello, hello, everybody.
Mhm.
Welcome. We'll get started here in about a minute as we begin to let folks in. Thank you so much for joining us over your lunch hour today. Um,
All right. People are starting to come
cool.
in.
Well, we'll get started here, and folks will be joining us here. And yeah, just really glad that you're here joining us for lunch. Hopefully you're, yeah, eating something or taking a break from your emails and many meetings that I know we all are in. So thanks for spending that with us. So today we will be presenting around the gap of opportunity, specifically here in Puget Sound region. We only have about an hour, so it's going to go by really quickly. But really grateful that you are deciding to learn more about this population with us. Go to the next slide. So I'll introduce myself. Hello, my name is Angela Pierce Snow. I use she, her pronouns, and I work here at Northwest Education Access. I'm a program director of Collective Impact, and I've been here for about 13 or 14 years. I lose count. But specifically, this entire time have been over 14 years of supporting the Opportunity Youth population and have been grateful to, yeah, really learn from this population and have a great passion for it. I'll pass it to Jeff.
Uh, yeah, I guess it's good afternoon now. Thanks for joining us. Jeff Corey, he, him pronouns, Deputy Director at Northwest Education Access. I'm trying to channel the energy that I had in this picture. I look so excited. So I'm going to try to bring that to you all today. We'll see how it goes. But do really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Awesome. And Cooper Metz is also on. You'll see that she's sharing screen and also might be putting things in the Q&A. She is joining us to support us with all the tech. So thank you, Cooper, for being here with us today. So like I mentioned, we have a short amount of time and 60 minutes will go by really fast. But we, if anything, want and hope that you will leave here today with just knowing what the term opportunity youth is. Um, I'm going to quote one of our board members and partners, Rothy, who I think might be on here right now. Rothy, when you had posted this on LinkedIn, this event, you used the phrase like, we don't know what we cannot see, or we can't change what we cannot see. And I think that is an overall theme for us who work with this population run into. So we're excited that you want to learn who Opportunity Youth are. And today you're going to learn the extent of the reach of Opportunity Youth in our region. But hopefully, we are starting to investigate and think creatively and collectively about practices and systemic changes to support and re-engage young folks to education and career. So if anything today, we just hope you just have a better idea on and spotlight this population in your everyday work. So today we'll talk about the term opportunity youth. We'll zoom out for a little bit on the national context of who opportunity youth are, and then really going into the local context, both in our state, but specifically in King and Pierce counties. We'll start to kind of share what we're seeing the community impact being. We'll have an opportunity to pause for Q&A, and then really leave with opportunities, creative and promising practices that you can take with you. We do have the Q&A option open. I believe it should be working. Um, if you have any questions throughout this presentation, please put your Q&A questions there. And when we get to the Q&A time, that will help us see what we can answer. You also have the opportunity to either comment on someone's question or upvote somebody's question. And that will be really helpful for us because we will not have a ton of time. But please put your questions there because we will be sending out the slides and information afterwards later this week. And if we can't get to everyone's questions today, we want to make sure we are sending answers to each of your questions. So put those in there for us. All right, next slide. So first, just starting out with who Northwest Education Access is, we have been serving opportunity youth in this region since 2002, so over 24 years of experience. Our roots really began serving the unhoused youth population in the U District. And since then, we have expanded our services across King County, Snohomish County, and in Pierce County. So we do our work by directly serving young adults, 16 to 21, in navigating and accessing their education and career goals. We do this by specifically targeting opportunity youth or youth who have additional barriers or experience some kind of disruption in their educational or career journey. So a lot of those young people might identify as foster youth. They were involved in the justice system. They are dealing with unstably housing situations, or we also support students who are undocumented. And we do this by partnering with reengagement programs, community technical colleges, and all of the many amazing community-based organizations that are supporting our most vulnerable populations. We also offer training on our model and have been sharing our tools with other CBOs and institutions the past couple of years. So, in addition to our direct service work, we are also actively doing that. Um, I'm getting a message that maybe our Q&A is not working. If you can do the Q&A, please try. And if not, I will adjust that when it's Jeff's turn. But thanks so much for that heads up. Oh, Tess, thank you, Arturo. Thanks. So in addition to our direct service work, we are also the backbone of a local reengagement collaborative network called the Sound Reengagement Collaborative. And we have over 300 folks who are on our mailing list. And last year had over 150 individual service providers attend a meeting. So across King and Pierce County, about 60 partners, different organizations, whether they're in workforce, college setting, open doors programs, an apprenticeship, or a basic needs provider. We have been gathering monthly to share best resources, practices, and start to investigate collectively on intentional practices and strategies we can do to not only engage opportunity youth, but we also are looking at adult learners. And so the Sound Reengagement Collaborative is also part of a bigger national movement through the Aspen Institute's Opportunity Youth Forum. You might hear us mention Aspen or OYF a couple times in this presentation. Um, and mostly because they have been a great support for us in gathering this data that we will be presenting to you all today. And so the Opportunity Youth Forum is comprised of over 40 plus urban, rural, and indigenous communities that are all having this same initiative of supporting opportunity youth. You can also see that we are we are the only collaborative part of the OIF forum in the state, but also in the Pacific Northwest. So one of our hopes is through this webinar and through your all's connections as well, that we know there's opportunity youth all across our state and all across the Pacific Northwest. We definitely want to support more collaboratives and networks in building up their collaborative resources. So that's also a hope for us throughout this presentation. Awesome. So let's chat just briefly about the term opportunity youth. I wish we could do like emojis or something so I could see how many folks actually have heard of this population. But I'm guessing a good amount have not. So opportunity youth is the national term that is being used more often to describe young people who are between the ages of 16 to 24 years old who are both not in school and not working. And it's really important to establish that distinction. It's not just that they're not in school, but they're also not working, and they're describing work as either a part-time job or however a young person would have done the census data that they're not working. And school is also described as any training or education. So this will include apprenticeship as well. So these are all young people who are not in some kind of school, career training, apprenticeship, post-secondary, and not working. And when you think about these young people, or when you think about young people in general who are between these ages of 16 to 24, and if you reflect back on, your early 20s or your when you're 19, you know that a lot of young people in general need that network of support. And they need to be plugged in to some kind of resource to really power their growth and success. And the difference here is opportunity youth, or in some young people, they're just not plugged in. They're not plugged in to these various resources, and it could really differ and it's really individualized on the many different reasons. So you'll see that plugged in metaphor is really another way for us to describe that these students aren't just disconnected, they just need some support in plugging into resources, or plugging into whatever that next step is for them. We know that they're not plugged in for various reasons. They could be dealing with housing issues. They could be in and out of foster care. They could be experiencing negative climates in their comprehensive high schools. They're working to provide for the family. There's so many reasons, and it's also very individualized of why young people are not connecting or just having trouble in reconnecting. Let's go to the next slide. So, our big call to action is really to start thinking holistically about the supports these young people need to plug into their next steps. We won't have a ton of time today. We're really diving into data today and like the extent of opportunity within our region. So we're not really going to have time to talk about why students disengage or have trouble re-engaging. But there has been several reports in our region that we want to point folks to, and I will send these out later this week with all the materials as well. So Creating Paths for Change was a report done by UW Social Work, CCER, and our organization, Foundation for Tacoma Students, and Degrees of Change and Tacoma Completes, all completed reports around youth disengagement of some kind or barriers in some kind. And last year, our Sound Reengagement Collaborative engaged with these different reports that all really focused on student voice, which is extremely important in this work. And there was four themes that really rose up to the top of the surface of why young people are having trouble in connecting to their next step. And some of those themes were sense of belonging, basic needs, different life circumstances in general, mental, physical health, and lack of academic navigation or the proper navigation or support that they really needed in that time in their lives. So, as we don't have time to dive into this today, we do want to highlight the importance of listening to the young folks here, and we'll send these out so you can learn more and dive into this research that was done here locally later.
Cool. Thanks, Angela. All right. So I will get us kind of started diving into the data, as Angela mentioned. We're going to start with some national data from Measure of America. This data is generated from the American Community Survey. They update it every year. Cooper, I think, is going to drop a tool into the chat for you to play around with. And while I don't want this to distract you from the webinar, I do highly recommend checking this out on your own time. I think it's a pretty incredible tool. But first off, we wanted to call attention to the fact that as of 2022, we hope this number has decreased since then, but the most recent data that we have right now is that we have 4.3 million opportunity youth in the country, which is 10.9% of 16 to 24-year-olds. Next slide. Um, as Angela mentioned, there's been a really, I think, powerful national movement. A lot of communities coming together to think about their re-engagement strategies and to increase connection, decrease disconnection. And we saw that from 2010 to 2019, we had a drop in the disconnection rate of over 4%, so pretty significant. Not surprisingly, there was a spike during COVID, but we've seen consistent decrease since then. However, there's still a lot of work to do. Obviously, 10.9% is still a lot, over 1 in 10 young folks disconnected. Also, think it's important to call out that there are certain characteristics that make it more likely that you are an opportunity youth. And these probably aren't surprising to you, but folks living in poverty, young folks who identify as having a disability, non-citizens, these are all individuals who have a higher likelihood of being an opportunity youth. and we see disparities in the data around that. So again, the Measure of America tool provides a deeper dive into this, and I recommend that you look there because they have some really powerful data. The next slide, we're just gonna, so again, I won't spend a ton of time on this just because I want to keep us moving, but they do have data around disconnection by race and ethnicity. Um, we see that Native American young folks, Nahopi, um, Black young folks all have higher rates of disconnection. So we continue to see like the disparities in the outcomes for those populations of folks. There's some really here you'll also see that like Asian students have the lowest disconnection rate, but there's been some reports since then done by Measure of America that really dive into disaggregate the Asian community and show that there's really, a lot of disparities between different groups of Asian students there too. So I just recommend taking a look at the data and kind of digging in when you have time. All right. So, again, while Angela mentioned we will be spending most of our time today talking about some local data, and I will get there. But I did want to point out that we've been working with Equal Measure, who did some amazing a deep dive into our disconnection data, and that's what we'll be talking about. We are partnering with some amazing folks at WASAC to look at disconnection rates for the state of Washington. Maybe that's a future webinar. It's definitely data that we will bring to you soon. But we do know there are 94,000 or over 94,000 opportunity youth in our state, and they make up 11% of our 16 to 24-year-olds. So pretty high number of young folks experiencing disconnection. Next slide. What we will be talking about for the next few slides is our Sound Reengagement Collaborative region. So you'll see the term PUMA. You may have heard of PUMA. These are basically census tracts, neighborhood clusters that are broken up into groups of 100,000 people. So that's how the census gathers information, and that's how the data comes to us. So for the purposes of today, our Sound Reengagement Collaborative represents all of South King County. For those of you that were familiar with the Roadmap project, it's that region. All of Pierce County. And then because we have such strong partners in Bellevue, we included Bellevue's PUMA on the east side. So one small PUMA on the east side. That is the group that we are talking about today. That is the Sound Reengagement Collaborative, or that's our region. Next slide. In our region, we have 22,805 opportunity youth. I'll let that sink in. That's 11.1% of the 16 to 24-year-olds in this region that we just described, South King County, and all of Pierce County, who are not in school and not working. Okay. And oh yeah, and I think it's important to add about a quarter of Washington's opportunity youth are found in and live in this region. Go ahead. Uh, Also just want to call out that while we have the overall disconnection rate of 11.1, if you zoom into specific neighborhoods, this is probably not a surprise to you, but we see even higher rates of disconnection. So Parkland Spanaway, South Tacoma, Federal Way Des Moines, and then Berrien, SeaTac, Tukwila, White Center. These are all PUMAs where we see significantly higher disconnection rates. So just wanted to call that out, that it doesn't look the same everywhere. And there's a few places where it's much higher than our overall regional disconnection rate. Okay, so I just want to make sure I talk through this in a way that makes sense. So we're thinking about all of the opportunity youth in our region, 22,805. They fall into different categories. So about 2/3 of the opportunity youth in our region are young folks who have a high school credential or high school or a secondary credential, so a high school diploma or a GED, no post-secondary credential. They're not working, they're not in school. 2/3. It's pretty staggering data, and it's something that definitely jumped out to us. It's something that's kind of an impetus for our collective impact work that we're doing right now. Also, you can see here that about a quarter of young folks, so just over 5,000, fall into the high school disconnection category. So those are young folks who have no secondary credential, are not in school, or not working. And then just over 2,000 folks have a post-secondary credential but are not working. So this is what makes up the opportunity youth in our sound re-engagement region. All right. Really quickly, just wanted to provide some demographic information that we got from Equal Measure with this data. So they provide a gender breakdown. It's just binary gender data, but you can see that here. And then I think really something to call your attention to is the age breakdown. So while I think most interventions or a lot of interventions in our community are targeted to the 16 to 19-year-olds, and a lot of that is because we kind of connect them to the K-12 system. Over or just under two-thirds of our opportunity youth in our region are 20 to 24 years old. So we're thinking a lot about how do we do a better job at designing interventions that target this section of young folks. All right. And then again, really quickly, just wanted to share some data around race and ethnicity. So probably not a surprise based on disparities that we see in outcomes across the country. But while young folks of color make up less than half of the young folks in our community, they make up a majority of our opportunity youth. So again, you can see further breakdown. We've got a data set. If anyone's interested in getting that, we would be happy to share kind of the deep dive that Equal Measure provides us. But that's where we got all this information. Cool.
Thanks, Jeff. And that was just a lot of data at you real fast, real quick. So please, please, if you have questions, put that in the Q&A because we will have time. We realized as well that Cooper can't drop a link unless she's responding to someone. So just a heads up to check the answered Q&A for the links that we mentioned earlier today. So Jeff earlier was zooming into the over or almost 23,000 young people who already are identified as opportunity youth. So he was really zooming in on the characteristics of that smaller population. Now we want to zoom out a little bit and compare how opportunity youth are, what's going on with the situations and how unique their situation is compared to the broader youth population of all 16 to 24-year-olds in our region. It gets a little confusing, so I'm trying to, yeah, be really clear that we're going to zoom out now and compare with the greater youth population. Next slide, please, Cooper. So, again, those different categories, we're going to look at each one and how this is compared to the rest of the population. So, looking at that first high school disconnection. So, now we're looking at all young people in our region who are 16 to 24-year-olds who don't have a GED or diploma. About 11% of our young population, or 1 in 10, they're not in school and not working. Um, so now we're zooming out and looking at that bigger population. When we look at post-secondary disconnection, again, these are all young people who already did the thing. They already got their GED or high school diploma, so they're not in high school anymore. But about 3 in 10 young people who have a GED or high school diploma, they're not in school, so they're not continuing education. And I'm mentioning again, this is also including apprenticeship or career training of some kind, and they're not working. So, about 3 in 10 young people who already have their GED and high school diploma are not continuing either in their career or post-secondary or career training for whatever reason it may be. And then looking at workforce disconnection. So these are all 16 to 24-year-olds who got their high school diploma, they got a post-secondary credential, but there's still about 1 in 10, a little over 10%, of all 16 to 24-year-olds who have a post-secondary credential. They're not in school, so they're not continuing or earning additional credentials of some kind, and they're not working. So just gonna let that sit for a little bit. We're gonna dive into each one, some successes and some things that we've seen. But just really want to highlight, zooming out, that this is a little bit more common than we're seeing, especially that post-secondary disconnection. I think that's why that lit up to us so much because these young people already have their high school diploma. I think sometimes when we hear youth disconnection or you hear the term dropout, we're thinking it's like high school dropout. But in fact, we're seeing more of the young people, they have that credential. They're just not getting connected to whatever that next step is. Let's go to the next slide. So, Equal Measure, they also gave us some data over the span of a few years, which was really great so that as a collaborative, we can also start to see where we're making progress and where we need to do some more targeted intervention. So this is just comparing the two counties that we had in our Pumas. So the green is only just South King County and Bellevue, and the blue is Pierce County. So like a lot of other communities in our country, across the country experienced, there was an uptick in disengagement because of COVID. And I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. We know that a lot of our young people disengaged. They needed that in-person interaction. Um, Luckily, however, both counties and nationally, we are back to pre-COVID numbers. So I just want to say that is a huge win that we didn't let the disconnection continue, or that we are addressing it, especially with high school. And both here in Pierce County and South King County, um, we are back to pre-COVID. I do want to highlight, we did think it was very interesting that in South King County and Bellevue, there wasn't an uptick of disengaged young people like we saw across the country in the data. But when we were talking to our partners who led the King County Reengagement Network, um, we're guessing a lot of that had to do with the interventions that the high schools and the open doors programs were really leading in those waivers, and it really kept students engaged. So really great. And yeah, we're really happy to see this. Next slide. All right. So looking at post-secondary disconnection. So overall, like I mentioned earlier, and nationally, we have seen that disconnection rates are returning to pre-COVID levels. However, we are not seeing that same dip down for post-secondary disconnection, and even more so in Pierce County. So this is an opportunity that we really want to highlight. We really want to yeah, shed that spotlight on, because I didn't really many people know this. So since 2019, the post-secondary disconnection rate in Pierce County rose from 31.5% in 2019 to 41.3. So that's about 4 in 10 or 2 in 5 young people who already have their GED or high school diploma. They don't have a post-secondary credential. They're not actively working on post-secondary credential or school, or career training, and they're not working. Um, so that's a very significant number. And I think for those of us who are from Pierce County, live here in Pierce County, like myself, um, for me, it just makes me wonder what's happening, what's going on, what are the barriers for our young people getting connected to that next step, which is again why we wanted to bring everyone here together today so that we can start to think about and start to have those conversations about other interventions. Because we do need to start thinking creatively of how to reach this population. Because again, these students are not in high school anymore, and they don't need to be in high school anymore. They already got their high school diploma, they already got their GED, and they're not yet at a college campus, they're not yet in an apprenticeship or any kind of job training. So, this is really a call to action to think creatively of how to reach students who are not in any of those settings yet and how we can support them in bridging, plugging in to whatever that next step is for them. So as a region, there's a lot of potential to think about this. And we're really excited to do that with y'all. And we're excited in the Sound Reengagement Collaborative to really tackle this. And we've set some specific goals around this connection rate. Next slide. And so lastly, we'll just highlight the workforce disconnection. So I do want to highlight that you see that this dips down to 10.7%. And I think that really highlights that we're seeing once a young person has a post-secondary credential, the more likely they are to work. And just thinking back to the last slide, those students who had a high school diploma, there were still about 3 in 10 or 4 in 10 in Pierce County who were not working. So we are seeing that with some kind of credential, whether that's a certificate, finishing a training program of some kind, students are getting to work. However, there still is a lot of work to be done. If you look at this little map I drew, just the journey of these 16 to 24-year-olds, they got their high school diploma. And then they did the hard thing of navigating financial aid or getting into an apprenticeship and all the tests there. They got whatever the certificate is, training is, but they are still not connecting. There's some kind of roadblock still happening in getting into work or continuing their education if they wanted to up their credentials, get another certificate, turn that certificate into an AA or AA to BA. Something is blocking there. And so we just still want to highlight that because we know that's having a livable wage job is essential, especially in our region where price of living is so high. So highlighting that.
All right. So again, one of the great things about being part of this national network of communities that Angela described earlier is that we do get to see some comparison data from other regions. So here we're just sharing some comparison data with Atlanta, our partners in Houston, Los Angeles, Oakland, and Philadelphia. I think that one thing that you'll see here is that our overall disconnection rate is pretty comparable to some of the other communities here. Our high school disconnection rate is a little higher than a few communities, but still it's right in there. And our workforce disconnection rate is actually considerably lower than a number of the communities listed here. Again, it's the post-secondary disconnection that stood out to us. And as Angela mentioned, this is young folks that have completed a high school diploma or a GED, but do not have a post-secondary credential and are not currently working or in school. And it's 34.4%. The average kind of across all of the OIF communities is 22.8%. So uh, almost 8% higher here in our local region. And definitely something that's got our attention and again is driving the work that we're doing. Next slide. Okay, so again, just some observations and opportunities that we were thinking about after going through this data. So I think number one, it's high school and GED re-engagement and completion interventions seem to be working while we're not encouraging any like disinvestment from that. We want to continue that great work. We did want to call out that we have seen high school graduation rates increase by nearly 10% for all income groups over the past decade in Washington State. This is data from OSPI. It's really exciting. But I think that we also know that that's not enough, right? We've seen some data that shows that at least 70% of jobs in our region require some sort of post-secondary training. And we really want to make sure that we're giving young folks access to pathways that include credentials that will help them connect to livable wage work opportunities. And again, just something that stands out to us is this 30.4% of young people with high school credentials in our region, but no post-secondary credentials who are not in work or not working and not in school. And one of the questions that we've asked is kind of what does that mean for our local workforce, for our workforce, for our local economy, for our communities, to have that sort of disconnection rate, to have 22,805 young adults who are not working and not in school. And those are the types of questions that we wanted to bring to you all today, and that we hope to collaborate with you all in answering over the next few years. All right. So pause for questions, Angela.
Yeah, yeah. So we do have a couple questions in the Q&A. If you have anything right now, please add it. We are doing good on time, and so we can take a second to answer. Um, Jeff, do you want to look at Arthur's question?
Yeah, Arthur. So I think that for our region, it's 52% male identified young folks and 48% female identified. Again, the data that we have has only the binary options, so I'm not sure. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if it's perfect data, but I think it's relatively close, although a slight edge to male identified young folks. And then,
And
oh,
then Dimitri's question regarding the workforce connection says it could be interesting to explore this data over time. Could it be that there is workforce connection on and off that may tell us more about wages and cost of living employment trends?
yeah, I mean, number one, I agree with that thought, Dimitri. Appreciate the question. I think that a lot of the a lot of our thinking is that, I mean, this is like this data is staggering because it's folks that aren't in school or not working. So that doesn't include anyone who's underemployed or coming in and out of school or so we know that the challenge is greater than this data even describes. And I think you're right. I think there's a lot of interesting research that could be done into this, and we are buying, I think we're only scratching the surface. But excited again, to bring you the state level disconnection data in partnership with WASAC over the next few months, and to dig further into these questions because yeah, we have similar questions.
Thanks. Um, Claudia's question is, do these figures include incarcerated youth?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's one that we've asked. The answer is I think it depends. So I've had two different answers. One was that it doesn't include incarcerated youth, at least ones that are in any education program. So I think that that is the case. But again, I would need to look a little bit closer into that. And Claudia, I would be happy to do that and to get back to you. Our partners at Equal Measure have absolutely thought about that question and can probably provide a more nuanced answer. Although from what I remember, it would not include incarcerated youth who are actively engaged in education.
Yeah.
So again, the challenge is much greater than even, we're describing with this data. I think that's important to remember.
Yeah, and just a reminder, yeah, the data is pulled from the what is it called? The American Community Survey through the census. And so we also know that that may not always be perfect in what they're collecting, and could be limited even with like some of the demographic data that we got. It was some of it was limited or it wasn't yeah, conclusive enough for us to share. So there's some things there we need want to work on.
I see a question here from Arturo. Um, yeah, I don't. So about an NWEDA being the only org serving OY, we definitely don't claim to be that. Although I will say the example here is like organizations like Mesa that are working within the CTC system and doing incredible work. Um, I think that what we're referring to is the fact that we're the only college access organization in the region that's specifically targeting OI. Part of that model is helping those young folks connect to really incredible programs like Mesa to get the support that they deserve and need to pursue post-secondary education. And so, I mean, a big part of our model is that we do everything in partnership, that we really try to help young folks build out their support systems, both in their community and then on campus. And we do that by partnering with amazing organizations like Mesa. So yeah, I think that this is all done in partnership. I think that the comment was just pointing out that there are very few, there's a lot of college access groups and very few are really thinking about this population. And we think that's because often OI go unnoticed even in their own communities.
Yeah, and just adding to that, because I'm the product of a lot of our college success organizations around the region. Thinking of this population specifically, they're not in the traditional high schools and they're not yet on college campuses like where Mesa could be or other programs similar. And so I think that's why we're wanting to raise awareness of this because these young folks are not yet connected there. And so where are there creative solutions that we can think collectively? Because we can't and we don't want to be the only ones thinking about this. And in fact, that's also why we're starting to share our training and tools with community-based organizations as well, because we're seeing that a lot of these young folks are getting their basic needs met by community-based partners and obviously thinking about their basic needs first. And so how can we skill up the folks that are working directly with Opportunity Youth already, and support them in having some of these bridging skills. We'll do this last question real quick and then we'll continue, but please keep adding questions because like I said, we might have time to answer them later or we will for sure in an email. Shelly's asking, what are they doing for money if they are not working?
Great question. I mean, I don't, I feel like I can only answer this like anecdotally. From our work with young folks, I mean, a lot of folks are accessing support from family and friends. They're couch surfing. They're getting by in any way that they can. I think that the young people that we work with are incredibly skilled at navigating systems. Sometimes they need some support in um, translating kind of their incredible navigation skills in a new setting like post-secondary education and we obviously spend a lot of time helping them do that. But they are absolutely resourceful. But this would be a great question, if we're talking about like research that could be done to better define the opportunity youth both in our region, around the state and nationally. This would be a great thing to look into, so appreciate the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, yeah, I think that, like those reports I mentioned earlier, a lot of them, some of them were about high school disconnection. But now that we know, we see this number, right, that post-secondary disconnection is one of the biggest. I think there's opportunity to do more research and more being curious of what are young people who already have that high school diploma or GED? What are they? Yeah. What are they doing for money? What are they doing for work? But also like what's getting in the way of them accessing work if or training of some kind. So, all very good questions. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to just drop all the data on you and then leave, because it makes it that calls out the challenge, which is important, and we hope this is a call to action for you all in the same way that it has been for us. But we also wanted to acknowledge that there's a lot of great work going on already in our community to address some of the challenges that we described. And this is by no means the definitive list of promising practices. You will see that we are directly connected to several of these promising practices. So this is really from our view. But we thought it was important to call a few of these out and to leave you with some ideas about great work that is happening in our community and maybe opportunities to scale. So, one of the things that you probably know of is Washington State has open doors programs. These are programs that target 16 to 21-year-olds who have disconnected from school. They provide a lot of kind of wraparound supports that students need, often kind of an alternative schedule opportunity and things like that, to help students who have disconnected kind of re-engage in school and then earn either a GED or high school diploma. As part of the national OI network, there's a lot of jealousy. We hear a lot of folks from around the country that are so excited that we have this funding, and that this model is unique. And so we wanted to call that out. Also, something that's really cool is there's a lot of dual enrollment programs. Many of the Open Doors programs offer dual enrollment opportunities. So people who are pursuing a GED or high school diploma can also be getting post-secondary credits. And our partners at SBCTC shared some really great data on the dual enrollment students. So dual enrollment students transfer from community colleges into bachelor's programs at 23% higher rates than other community college students. They complete bachelor's degree at 18% higher rates than other community college students. So we just wanted to call this out. Like we have these amazing open doors programs. We have some really successful dual enrollment options within them. And this is something that we should build on. Obviously, again, our bias, but we're really excited about the Sound Reengagement Collaborative. As Angela mentioned, this is really building on kind of the legacy and the great work of the King County Reengagement Network. We were able to add amazing partners from Pierce County in the past few years, and trying to do some really intentional collaborative work to lower disconnection rates in our community. The goal is really you've got all of these community-based organizations that are providing basic needs and really crucial services. How do you build connections between those programs, the young people accessing those supports, and secondary partners, so K-12 partners, alternative ed partners? How do you build really intentional connections to post-secondary opportunities, whether it be professional training, transfer programs, apprenticeships, and then how do you help folks transition and build really strategic on-ramps into our local labor market. And so at Sound Reengagement Collaborative, we are trying to work together to be thoughtful about creating strategies to support young folks from who are currently disconnected all the way to earning a living wage and um, getting the support that they need. Just here, we have our goal by 2030. Sound Reengagement Collaborative hopes to reduce our community disconnection rate from 11.1 to 8%. This is just the guiding light. Obviously, the great work that we're doing and the way that we get there is going to be by collaborating and building on great work that's happening all around our region already. But it's great to have something that we can kind of collectively point to and measure our work against. I really, wanted to call out the King County Promise has two pretty awesome programs going on right now in partnership with Highline College, and then this one that I'll share about is in partnership with Renton Tech, called Promise to Community. And I think that, Promise programs are pretty popular right now. Um, However, most Promise programs around the country require a high school diploma to leverage college funding. So that means that model typically excludes GED students or students who have finished high school, but maybe there's a gap between completion and enrollment in post-secondary. And Promise to Community offers an on-ramp specifically for those students. So it's really, we want to highlight this because we love the Promise model and we would love to see more Promise programs add an on-ramp for students that maybe, took a different route. Um, and just wanted to call out that we're seeing incredible results. So a 73% persistence rate. So that's, for folks that enrolled, 73% were still enrolled during year two in this partnership, which we think stacks up, pretty competitively against any Promise programs in the country. It's pretty incredible. Um, Also, just wanted to call out Northwest Education Access. Obviously, we mentioned that we do all of our work in partnership, and that's really the key to our success and our student success. But we have found that by providing, well, here's an example. So we have 65 to 75% persistence rates for any cohort, for any given cohort. So it ranges in there, which we're really excited about. We've also seen those rates rise up to 88% for young folks who receive our needs-based scholarship. So again, this is not a merit-based scholarship. This is the students who have the highest needs are prioritized. And we've seen, 88% persistence rate for those folks from 2017 to 2024 who have received our one-on-one post-secondary navigation and the needs-based scholarship. So, what we know and what we've learned is that if you help young people kind of cultivate their purpose, and then you provide flexible, individualized, student-centered support, that young people, opportunity youth can achieve great things. Go ahead, Angela.
There was a quick question, Jeff, if to clarify promise programs, real quick for
Oh,
folks.
yeah, yeah, yeah. For sure. So, promise programs are usually the typical program is that it's a partnership between either a district or a high school that says that if you graduate, so we have a really awesome program locally, the Seattle Promise. I think Christian, one of our partners from Seattle Promise, is actually here today. But so it means that anyone who graduates from a Seattle college can get free tuition and a lot of like ongoing support, navigation support to enter programs at the Seattle College District. So they've got these promise programs around the country where if you graduate from a certain program, you get access into post-secondary opportunities, depending on the partnership. It looks a little different, but and what we're really calling for is like, yes, we love that, and we've seen a lot of success offering on-ramps for students who maybe disconnected and went the GED route, or disconnected and went to work and then are trying to come back. And so we're encouraging folks to consider promise programs, yes, and offering intentional connectors for folks that went a different route besides a high school diploma.
Thanks, Christian. Just saw your your comment there. Um, yeah, so we again, we don't want to just like leave you with all this data because we feel like there's so many promising actionable strategies as a community we can all begin to take to really target this population. And so first off, just sharing those two examples that Jeff just gave, we highlighted those because those were specific targeted post-secondary bridging opportunities for Opportunity Youth. And so having more targeted interventions for this specific population is needed, especially for those ages 20 to 24 and beyond. And this is why our Sound Reengagement Collaborative also has incorporated supporting adult learners or adult learner providers because there's so much more similarities there of also probably the same reasons why our adults aren't continuing education or having trouble with work. And so just thinking more specifically about that, about what targeted interventions or creative solutions we can begin to come up with to reach the 20 to 24 plus population. Post-secondary bridging and navigation support, thinking about opportunities, this can also be done outside of high school and college campuses. Because again, just pointing out that post-secondary disconnection rate, which is about 2/3 of our opportunity, they already got a high school diploma. But they're not at a college campus yet, and they're not working. So thinking about where that bridging and navigation support can be in community or virtually, or learning more about those young people and what are they doing, and how can we connect authentically with them. Wraparound and holistic barrier support must be included in programming and interventions. We didn't get to dive into it a ton today, but as you saw from those themes, a lot of the reasons young people shared in those reports of why they are not connecting or is because they're dealing with life barriers. They're dealing with housing. They're dealing with health. They're taking care of their family. And so as we begin to think about how to get more young people into school or to work, because they're not working either. Where are those wraparound and holistic barrier supports to really uplift these young people into plugging into that next step? And lastly, the last two things here, at least for like strategies for programs, is really prioritizing supportive relationships. What we have seen with Opportunity Youth, again, going back to that theme, sense of belonging was also a huge barrier. And so we know, and I know a lot of you know, that one amazing relationship with an adult or just a supportive peer can make a huge difference in mentoring a student and helping them get to that next piece of their roadmap, right, to their career or livable wage job. And lastly, cross-sector partnerships are critical. Opportunity Youth, they are not just in one system. They are dealing with a lot going on. So we need to start thinking about how we can work more collectively and collaboratively. So bringing in the basic needs providers with education, bringing in legal support, all those different pieces are going to be really critical to really support a young person on campus, off campus, at work, in community, all the different pieces, because that's where we're seeing students are disengaging or quote unquote falling through the cracks, really. So if we create this web, this network of support across sectors, it's going to be really beneficial for this population. Next. And so when we start to think about strategic funding and system support, there's a couple things here that we really want to call out and have everyone here start thinking about. So just thinking about inclusive language of Opportunity Youth. There has been a lot of times, unintentionally, we are excluding this population from services. So thinking about your funding proposals you are putting out if you are a foundation, or if you work in policy, thinking about our policies or programs, or even just the participant criteria you have for a student to get a scholarship, there's been many times we have seen where it has been really limiting for opportunity youth to access either services or yeah, or barrier mitigation support. And so that could even look like when you have a program that's only for seniors. Again, a lot of what we're seeing is those students are 20 to 24. They're not in high school anymore, right? Um, or there's maybe barriers to even funding sometimes where our basic needs providers are providing also this support, but they don't qualify because they are not a high school program or things of that sort. So just starting to think more intentionally about how we can include this population um, as we think about systems change and making sure that we are not unintentionally excluding this population. And then supporting and funding projects. So as you think of, whether you want to volunteer or join a collaborative like ours, thinking about where targeted universalism of opportunity youth is highlighted. Um, Opportunity youth is just one small part of our population, but it's not their experiences and what they're talking about. It's not, we all deal with this. When you think of your own education or career journey, there is usually some kind of disruption of some kind. Their life happens. And so thinking about when we start to create targeted interventions for this population, it's not only going to support them, but it's going to support all our young people, even our adult learners, right? Because we are seeing that once we support this population with just navigating a complex system, if they think it's complicated, that everyone else thinks it's complicated as well. So thinking about those opportunities. And then again, um, I'm going to call this out a lot. So strategic cross-sector partnerships. So allowing for cross-sector partnerships, intentional partner building is going to be really essential because our students are not, again, they're not in just one system. They are experiencing a lot of systems. They need a lot of resources, and we need to be able to come together more and collaboratively think creatively about solutions. We have 3 minutes. So lastly, just join us. And so this can look like just staying up to date with us. We're really glad that you're here. Um, Again, calling back to our goal, we just want you to leave with knowing who this population is, and that's a win for us. So, but if you would like to stay connected or join us, please go to our website. We always are looking for new partners, volunteers, donors, supporters to support our work. And then with the Sound Reengagement Collaborative, you are welcome to join our collaborative. We have monthly meetings, and you can get our mailing list. We have meetings that are hybrid, so you don't have to be in person just to learn more about what we're doing. And also, our 60 plus partners are doing amazing work in their different sectors. So, again, these are also other partners who are working with Opportunity Youth in other ways, whether it's open doors programs, adult basic ed, or basic needs providers. And so we would also love for you to check them out on our About SRC website or that QR code there and learn more about what they are doing. I also forgot to mention, we also provide training and sharing our toolkit. So please let us know if there's opportunities to train other community-based organizations or colleges on this model or even this population. We are happy to spread the word and share those resources. And lastly, Jeff mentioned earlier, we're trying to get more state data. And so we also feel like we want to share more of this opportunity with the rest of our state because Opportunity Youth, the things that our young people are going through, it's not just here locally, it's across the state. And so on April 24th, just save the date, we are hoping to have a statewide summit in Renton. Shout out to RTC. Thank you for hosting us to bring together providers across the state who are working with Opportunity Youth and adult learners and start to think creatively and as a state how we can start to support this population onto their next step. So please save that date and get on our mailing list because we'll be sending out more information about that.
Look at that timing.
We
Just
did it. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We are so grateful. Feel free to email Jeff and I if you have additional questions. We will send out the slides. We recorded this, so if there's something you want to remember, please we'll have that all out, and then I'll send out the reports and resources as well.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Hey, happy December and hope you have a great rest of the week.